So today we are going to look at medical ethics, and the main thing we're going to talk about with medical ethics today is we're going to look at specific area of medical ethics, and mainly we're going to talk about infertility, and we're going to look at the different elements related to infertility today, and then tomorrow we'll take a look at the church's position with regard to the infertility technologies that exist within the medical profession today. But before we begin, I want to remind you that you have an article due this Thursday, which is May 7th. You also have a test on laws and ethics that will be on Friday, May 8th. Your study guide is already on Moodle, so obviously you need to take a look at that. So we're going to take a look at, like I said, at medical ethics. And when we talk about medical ethics, we're talking about, again, with morality, it's the decisions that are made related to medical research. Now, we're talking about medical research. We're talking about, do they test different drugs or procedures on human beings without, making sure that they're, say safe or effective. I mean, this is one of the things that we're facing right now with trying to find a vaccine for the coronavirus, where they're trying to rush all of this stuff in, and usually it takes years upon years to come up with a vaccine, and even with what they're doing right now, they're still talking about the fact that it could take a year to 18 months before we actually have a vaccine. So they want to make sure that it's safe and reliable before they put it out into the public. And so, this is kind of where we have to look at this. And then obviously with practice about certain procedures that are done and things like that. And so, as with everything that we do, when we're talking about medical ethics, we're dealing with the dignity of human life. Right? We have really spent a great deal of time focusing on respect for life and the value of life, regardless of whether you're in the womb or if you're 95 years of age. Whatever is being done is to be done with respect to human life. And as I'm sure you can figure, is that for the church is that they have condemned anything that would be done that would show irreverence for a person at any stage or age of life or any condition within their lives as well. So, this is the perspective that we're going to use when we look at the idea or the concept of medical ethics. And so we're going to look at reproductive technologies. And so when we talk about reproductive technology, and mainly we're talking about infertility, and we'll talk about what infertility is as well. But we're talking about those procedures, medical practices that are involving creating life and in the early stages of life. So the things that how does life come about? And when we're talking about the early stages of life, of course, these are some of the things that because of our medical technology, that can be done in utero, right? When we talk about in utero, we mean as inside the womb. They actually can do procedures to benefit the mother and the fetus. All right, so like I said, most of reproductive technologies involve infertility, and infertility is a situation where you have a couple who is unable to either get pregnant or have a child through natural methods. And obviously, as you can figure, we're talking about natural methods, that natural law is going to come into play with the church's decision on some of these reproductive technologies. The videos will be put into a separate PowerPoint so that you can take a look at those away from these notes. Okay, so one of the types of reproductive technologies that exist is called artificial insemination. And basically what artificial insemination involves is the collection of sperm, and then the sperm is mechanically. What I mean by mechanically is that we're talking about that the sperm is inserted into the woman's uterus outside of the normal process of sexual intercourse. So what is done is that they collect the sperm. The infertility specialists, they examine the sperm, make sure that it's viable, right, that it's healthy, and then they'll use what is called a pipette. It's kind of a long tube that is inserted into the woman's uterus, and then they insert the sperm into the uterus, hoping that the woman will get pregnant. Now, what they do with this on the woman's side is that what they do is they hyperstimulate her ovaries, and what that means is that during a woman's normal menstrual cycle, she will produce one egg. There are occasions that she may produce two eggs, but more than likely she's going to produce one egg. But when they hyperstimulate the ovaries, means that she produces more eggs. Right? So they either, mainly today, they inject fertility drugs into the woman's body so that she produces more eggs. And then when she is at part of her menstrual cycle where she's fertile, that they would then insert the sperm, hoping that she would get pregnant. So that's one aspect of that. So again, you have two different types of artificial insemination. One is artificial insemination husband, where they use the sperm of the husband. Right? That for whatever reason, the woman cannot get pregnant, and so and again, it could be the fact that the husband's sperm has what is called low motility, which means that the sperm, they're sometimes called slow swimmers, that the sperm will die before it reaches the egg to fertilize the egg. Or, as we'll see on the videos, we'll talk about hostile mucus, which means that the woman's body attacks the sperm as if it's an invasion, kind of like an infection. So, what the body does is the body attacks infection. And so that's kind of the way the woman's body might attack the sperm. So, they have to try to avoid this or get around this, and so they would use artificial insemination as a means of doing this. The second type of artificial insemination is artificial insemination donor. And what that means is that the process is pretty much the same thing, right? Hyperstimulate the woman's ovaries, but then they use the sperm of somebody who has the same physical, ethnic characteristics as the husband, so that if the child is created, that they will be able to have pretty similar characteristics to the father. So this is the other way. So you have artificial insemination husband, artificial insemination donor as the two different types of artificial insemination. The second type of infertility or reproductive technology that we're going to talk about is in vitro fertilization. In vitro fertilization is a little bit more time consuming. It can also be very expensive. It is infertility. Let me just put it this way: infertility is a very emotional aspect of a couple's life. There's also the physical aspects of it too, because you're still hyperstimulating the ovaries. So here we have a situation where the woman can't get pregnant at all, for whatever reason it might be. Within the woman's body, she cannot get pregnant. And so what they'll do is that they will hyperstimulate the ovaries, as they do with artificial insemination. They will collect generally the husband's sperm, and they will then extract, and again we're talking about, it is a surgical procedure. It's not like a surgical procedure as if you are going to have a kidney removed or something like that. But it is still a surgical procedure, and that they will remove the mature eggs, and that the woman's egg is then fertilized with her husband's sperm in a petri dish, and then the embryo is then implanted in the woman's uterus. Now, here's the thing about this one. Again, hyperstimulation of the ovaries. There are many eggs that are available, and when they remove all the eggs mature eggs, they fertilize those. And the couple has to decide then how many of the fertilized eggs and how many of the embryo that they want to have implanted in the woman's uterus. Not every fertilized egg that gets implanted into the uterus will become a child. It doesn't. The egg would not implant in the woman's uterus and then thus become pregnant. So that's why they will insert multiple embryo into the woman's uterus. And with in vitro fertilization is where you see a lot of multiples. What we mean by multiples is that a couple will have twins, triplets, and of course, if you know anything about the Octomom had 8 babies through in vitro fertilization, which, when you're talking about medical ethics, the doctor that performed the procedure by implanting 8 embryo into the woman's uterus would be highly unethical. Those of you that may have watched John and Kate Plus 8, they had a set of twins through in vitro fertilization, and then they had the 6 kids in the second pregnancy through in vitro fertilization as well. But again, implanting embryos such as 6 or 8, that would be considered unethical within in the medical field because it's very hard on the woman's body. It's also, especially if they all come to pregnancies, it can become very expensive because you're having to deal with raising the children and everything else. And I know with the Octomom, with having 8 babies, there have been some of those babies that, because of the conditions within the womb and everything else, that there have been some issues with those kids as they've gotten older. So, so these are some of the things that have to be taken into consideration when you're dealing with in vitro fertilization. Same thing with artificial insemination, because there's also the possibility of multiples with both of those. All right, another maybe not procedure, but another aspect of infertility that is being done in our society today is surrogate parenting, surrogate mothers. This is where the woman is not able to carry the baby for whatever reason. Maybe she's had multiple miscarriages, and so what they do is that they find a woman who is willing to carry the child for the couple. Sometimes it's a member of the family. There was a TV reporter, newscaster, star by the name of Joan London. You may or may not know who she is. She used to be on Good Morning America. She had 2 sets of twins through a surrogate mother. As a matter of fact, both of these sets of twins were born at the Good Samaritan Hospital right here in Cincinnati. And actually, Good Samaritan Hospital kind of redecorated some of the birthing rooms and some of the hospital rooms on the maternity floor. And even today, even though those kids are, teenagers, that they are, the rooms are still referred to as the Joan London rooms. But so what they do, same thing with what we talked about with artificial insemination and in vitro fertilization. They'll hyperstimulate the woman's ovaries. Now, here's a couple of different things where this works. One, especially if it's a family member, they may use the egg of the relative that has the same genetic makeup or similar genetic makeup, because the woman is unable to produce eggs. She's had, there could be many different reasons as to why she's not able to get pregnant. And so what they would do is that they would, again, hyperstimulate the ovaries, and if you're doing artificial insemination, they would mechanically introduce the sperm of the husband into the uterus so that the woman would get pregnant. Or they might do it through in vitro fertilization, right? The woman cannot carry the baby, so again, hyperstimulate her ovaries. They remove the eggs, the mature eggs. They remove the eggs, fertilize them in a petri dish, and then they would put the embryo into the surrogate mother. And again, you have a higher tendency to have multiple births. As I had mentioned with surrogate mothering, or being a surrogate mother, sometimes the woman is unable to get pregnant because of her eggs. Sometimes this is done by age. As I said with Joan London, with I think her first set of twins, she was in her 50s, and so that she was too old, and so that could be an issue. One could be age. One could be the fact that that she may have had some type of medical situation, whether it could be endometriosis, and she's had had multiple surgeries, or maybe there was ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, but they still want to have children, and so they do have egg donation. Usually they get women between the ages of 18 and 35 to donate eggs, again, for this purpose, just like you have with artificial insemination, where you use donor sperm for the insemination. Now, some of the issues that do exist that can be done with reproductive technologies is that are considered genetic engineering, and this is where the church really hesitates or cautions a couple into getting involved in it. But sometimes they want to try to change some of the characteristics. Just to give you an example with eye color or physical structure. I mean, if you look at it's almost like, it's not the best way to say it, but it's almost like breeding within the animal population, right? You have the Kentucky Derby was supposed to be last weekend, and if the winning horse, once if the horse wins the Triple Crown, they may put the horse out to stud, which means that they want to use their genetic material to produce race horses that are of superior nature. To give you an example, too, with how this happens, even with human beings, is that you look at somebody like Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey has done a tremendous job in the NFL. I mean, he is probably one of the best all-around athletes that you'll find in the NFL. But his father played college football and also played football in the NFL, and his mother was a college athlete. So just because of the fact that his father was a great athlete, his mother was a great athlete, that it's natural for their children to be athletic. So that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about genetics. Your height, your physical structure, eye color, those are things that are genetic, and you'll find that sometimes people try to manipulate genetic material. Birth control is also another reproductive technology, and basically birth control is chemicals that are introduced into the woman's body to make her body think that she is pregnant so that she can't get pregnant. Basically, what happens is that you have these drugs that are ingested that do not allow a fertilized egg to attach to the uterine wall, so the woman cannot get pregnant. And so, again, this is it is a reproductive technology. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Again, the video will be on another PowerPoint that will also be uploaded to Moodle. Another form of reproductive technology, and you wouldn't think of it as a reproductive technology, but it is, and that's abortion. Abortion is a form of birth control. It stops pregnancy and eliminates pregnancy. We talked a great deal about abortion. So, this is one of the other things that does come into play concerning reproductive technologies. So, these are some things that we just need to understand and take a look at. All right, so we're going to stop here for today, and what we'll do is tomorrow we'll take a look at the church's position on these issues. And I'm sure that you can figure just by the way that I discussed these that the church is not going to be in favor of most of these, because one of the main things is that it goes against natural law. And so we'll stop here. I just again want to remind you that you have an article due on Thursday, and that you will have a test this Friday. And like I said, I will post the videos that are associated with the material that we've covered today, and then we will move on with the church's position on those reproductive technologies that we've discussed. So, take care and